Welcome to the State of Affairs. We are having conversations that matter in partnership with Serbian Radio Chicago. Very pleased to welcome two guests today, and they are out of Maryland. A delegate in the current Maryland House, Dan Cox, and he is running for governor of Maryland, and he picked a wonderful running mate. She is Serbian-American, Gordana Schifanelli, and both of them are attorneys. Welcome to State of Affairs.
Thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here. Thank you for having us.
And thank you for joining us. Certainly, Dan, you have picked a great running mate. Tell us, how did that come about?
Well, really, I tell you, when you look at the record of victory that she and her husband have had in Maryland for freedom and for various causes that we all hold dear, including our children, we see that our families and our children are under attack with the critical race theory and the whole Marxist approach to indoctrination. And she and her husband stood up, and they were victorious in one of our key counties, Queen Anne's County, and ended up replacing board members who were antithetical to our conservative and our Republican principles. And that just, created like a rising star effect in Maryland. And so she was always on the list. We interviewed about 7, but nobody could touch what Gordana and has done in Maryland, and it's been exciting to begin the partnership of working towards a better Maryland, because we want to make Maryland the free state again. That's our focus. We're called the free state, and yet we see it fast slipping away, and we want to make an end of that and turn us back in the right direction.
So Dan, you are an elected official yourself. You are currently serving in Maryland's House, running for governor. Just give me a little bit of a brief overview of what are the issues that Maryland is facing currently. As you said, it is a free state, but somehow, particularly this past year, we have seen, as a constitutional lawyer, you can obviously speak to that, we have seen our rights, our constitutional rights, declining and being consistently taken away.
Well, we are a deep blue state, but we happen to have a Republican governor. However, even though we have a great movement that elected him, because if you look at the state of Maryland, most of it is red. It's much more conservative than some of the other states might be, and most of our counties. Yet in actual governance, we've had really a rhino governing, and that has created a tremendous business loss. We've had over $2 billion lost in the last year and a half alone. That has created the largest transfer of wealth out of small business in Maryland in the history of Maryland. And the only reason why Maryland financially doesn't look as disastrous as some other places is because we have a large federal workforce. Sure. It's really the only saving grace we've had. So when you look at our platform, I'm running to restore freedom to the free state, to make sure our Constitution applies to everyone, to make sure our businesses can thrive again. And that means that they are no longer going to be subject to lockdowns, no vaccine mandates that are causing people by the thousands to decide either whether they get the jab or their job, even though they might have antibodies. It's a great option. I always supported the president's approach for the Operation Warp Speed, and I appreciated that as an opt-in. But now it's being reversed by the far left to make it a kind of a standard of whether or not you can go to restaurants, whether or not you can even have a business and function or have a federal contract. And that's got to end. It's going to end on day one when I'm elected. And then when you look at the other issues, ending CRT, making sure we restore American exceptionalism and teaching our kids the Constitution, those values are essential to advancing a free state. And then, of course, that includes reducing taxes. We want to, I think you're down in Florida. We want to have a Desantis approach here in Maryland. We can do it. Florida is very diverse, and so is Maryland. And we believe that Maryland has a bright future. So we're going to continue to press for these kinds of issues, school choice, making sure we have back the blue so that we have safety, and just ensuring all around American Republican values here.
Excellent. And let's unpack some of these issues one by one. And I want to go to Gordana because obviously you have risen as a star in Maryland, and you have gone obviously through some trials and tribulations. Let's talk about education. You are a mother, you have children, so does Dan, so do I, and we are looking at our education in particular and what it is that our children are facing and our future generations. So you have gone through quite a hassle, I must say, in Maryland. Tell us a little bit about that. There was a lawsuit, you went after the school board, and it is certainly something we have discovered last year, how important the local legislators are, our governors, our school boards, our elected officials on the local level. So Gordana, tell us about that a little bit.
Sure. So a year ago, June 5th, the superintendent of public schools took a microphone and went on to invite people to and children during the school hours while the kids were on Zoom, locked down in their houses because of COVID, to join her in rioting against the police. And that coincided with violent riots in Washington, D.C., and that's about an hour away from my house. So just so you know, these were dangerous times. And I thought that that was unconstitutional. It was illegal to have a public official use her position of authority to take and promote her personal political agenda, like defund the police, like promote BLM, a Marxist organization, and use children as little as 11 years old. So I objected on some Facebook sites, thinking that that would be the end of it. And after I got shut down by a very strong zealot or group that was working out of our local management board office, I was personally attacked. They said that I was racist, white supremacist, and then they further went on to try to get me terminated from the United States Naval Academy, where I teach law and economics. Unsuccessfully. They tried to intimidate with fear and personal attacks. I had my state's attorney patrolling here and filing no harassment charges against particular individuals that I've never met in my life. That is the point where I realized that we as community need to get organized, and we need to stop the entire Black Lives Matter Marxist movement in my county, which I did. Their office is no more operating from our county, and that superintendent who abused her position needs to leave. She ultimately left. The school board, who consisted of 4 Republicans at the time, but since it's a nonpartisan position, they were all scared to stop the aggression of that organization, didn't say anything. So they promoted critical race theory, Project 1619, and then the ultimate was to get the children to go and riot against the police and turn them into a social justice warriors. And that is something that you can imagine in a third world country, in a continent far away from here, not in a free state of Maryland or free America. And no one dared to stop them. So with me and volunteers, veterans, Marines, they stepped forward, and we created a slate. Just so you know, and I always say the statistics, numbers speak louder than any words. Typically, as a write-in candidate, which our candidates had to be on a write-in, because all these events were happening in June, and election was beginning October 26th a year ago. We had less than 3 months to organize the election, to find, to get, as a writing candidate, to be somehow, to tell the people to write the candidates' names on the ballot. So that was a challenge in itself. But usually when you have a writing candidate, if you get 500 votes through the write-in, you're a great success. We had 12,000.
Oh, and wow.
That was a great signal that people in Queen Anne's County had enough. Parents had enough. It was a nonpartisan position. It should stay nonpartisan, especially the school board. And our main theme was no politics in school, no 1619 project, no critical race theory, and promote trade schools for non-college bound kids. We are an island. We are on the Chesapeake Bay. There's a lot of need for HVAC workers and boat repair workers and electricians and many other trade programs. We have that, but no one's promoting these children for that. And I can tell you, after a year, we have measured in numbers a great success. Our schools are top 3 in the state of Maryland based on standardized testing and results. Our kids are mask-free in sports. They do have to have mask in classroom, but not in cafeteria. So we are kind of, looks like a hybrid thing to comply with the Maryland requirement for mandatory masking. And our county, Olga, is the first county in Maryland where public schools have official clay shooting team. That was an unheard of success, which opens the doors to our kids to participate in Olympic tryouts, get scholarships if they want to go to participate in clay and shooting teams in their schools. And it's an overall win-win for parents of our county. So Dan and I thought that this model, the patriotism model, can work well in all other 23 counties. And I think the time has come to do this.
Excellent. And that is something that brings me to a very specific issue Dan is passionate about, and that is something that has been seen across the nation being under attack, which is the Second Amendment. And you are a strong supporter of the Second Amendment, and both of you are, obviously. So just in terms of that, and in terms of everything that has been going on, we have experienced in this past year during the protests and during the BLM and Antifa riots, there were stores that sell guns and weapons that were completely out of bullets, out of stock. And one would maybe, Gordana, you and I could think of different nations that would be under such stress, but you would never think that the United States of America would come to this type of precipice. And we certainly are at a precipice in this nation. So Dan, tell me about just pursuing, as again, a constitutional lawyer, pursuing our Constitution the way it was meant, the way it was written.
Well, you're absolutely right. This is a major concern, particularly with some of the shortages that may or may not be encouraged by government policy. But one of the things that we do know is that Maryland is one of the worst states in the region. For instance, right now, Washington, D.C. has a shell issue requirement for concealed carry permits. And that was mandated by none other than Justice Kavanaugh when he was judge in the lower courts. So I want to do that in Maryland. It can be done by an order to the Maryland State Police today. And upon taking the oath of office, I will direct the Maryland State Police to shall issue permits regardless of your financial status. Right now, you get them if you're wealthy. But, you know, there's a lot of people who maybe don't have a small business who really do need the protection, particularly in with what we've seen the last year with some of these riots. And it's an essential right. I also think that when you look at what Gordana was talking about, encouraging youth sports and training, look, one of the greatest things that America has had has been a history of teaching young people how to handle firearms safely, respectfully, and to participate in the great outdoors. So we need to do that across the state of Maryland. My son actually is involved in trap shooting, and I've seen him just blossom with that. He won a national title as a young person last year. So I believe in that. I think it's the right path forward. And I know as a judiciary member in the House, it's one of our top issues. And so I've been fighting for the last 3 years on this in the House to make sure that we keep those rights, and I'll continue to do so.
Okay, so as we approach 2022, obviously, we are looking forward to supporting you and galvanizing the Serbian American community, but of course, all of other ethnic communities. Election integrity has been a big and a major talking point since 2020. So looking at 2022, looking at 2024, everybody is ready and people are getting organized, but have we lost the belief in our electoral system? What is it that you think you can do to ensure election integrity, to ensure that people will really believe in our democratic process and those pillars that have created this country into the exceptional and great country what are we up against? And until we sort 2020, it seems many people are losing confidence. Is it even worth it? So what are the concrete steps that we all can take to fight the mail-in ballots, the voting machines, the Dominion, and everything that we have heard in this past year?
Well, I tell you, the first thing that I'm going to do as your governor in Maryland is to ensure election integrity begins immediately. But even before then, we have to, as you said, we've got to get to the bottom of this and to make those steps of protections happen, particularly with a forensic audit. I want to have a forensic audit of 2020. I'm promising to order that. But in the process, as Gordana knows well, when you're running a campaign, you have standing and the opportunity to create a system to have checks and balances over those votes at the polls and also prior to. So I'm working with a group called Maryland Election Integrity. Myself, personally, I'm working with them to advance a review of both the voter ballots cast in 2020 and the signature ballots so that we can begin to look at that county by county to see why we have such a crazy anomaly of instead of a 3 to 7% jump, we had 37% turnout jump. It is unreasonable. It's statistically impossible. As you mentioned, the mail-in is a real problem, but also we have ENS machines with modems. So we want to look at all of that. We're doing it now. We're beginning that process now. But Gordana and I have also decided that we're going to focus on a strategy at the polls to make sure that every single person, every single precinct has our campaign there, multiple members monitoring the activity of people going in and out on the days that the polls are open, which in Maryland is, we have early voting and then we have the voting day. So when you combine those processes and then you look at the fact that we have a right to access as candidates, the mail-in ballots to do a forensic review, I think we're in a good position to make sure that we have a lot more protections and overview. When I worked for President Trump on the Lawyers for Trump team in Philadelphia for 3 weeks, we saw those mail-in ballots as the key, as the problem, and as well as some of the other anomalies. All of that, when you looked at the mail-in ballots, were kind of in a pale, and the Beltway counties of Pennsylvania is what stole Pennsylvania. I swore out an affidavit on that in terms of the anomalies that we saw, the discrepancies. And one of the things that I think can happen is to make sure that we have attorneys who, when we see this happening, we can go in and immediately file this information in court. It took us forever to get in front of the Pennsylvania court authorities. And then when we did, we had, unfortunately, an RNC appointed attorney who overruled my decision to challenge thousands of, our team had about 6,000 ballots in one county, and you multiply that by all the Beltway counties in the city, we had 30 to 50,000 that we could prove easily were fraud, easily. We demonstrated that, we had them challenged, we had it all teed up, and sadly we had some kind of an attorney that came in and just waived all of that and said, we're not going to challenge it. And that was a travesty for the election. So we're going to make sure that we're on top of this. And I know it's going to be an uphill battle, because Maryland has been doing this for years, well, not just in 2020, but I believe with Gordana and her experience in this with her husband, Mark, already on the ground in Queen Anne's, and also my experience. I was a Republican precinct attorney back in the day, and we helped elect our only Republican congressman, Andy Harris. Okay. And that was a big fight. I had an ACLU attorney next to me, and we were battling it out, challenging some of these ballots that we knew were fraudulent. And at the end of the day, that kind of pressure, that kind of accountability made the difference. And obviously the congressman was elected, but it's a fight, it's an uphill battle, but I think we're up to the task. I know, Gordana.
Excellent. And Gordana, I wanted to ask you, obviously you have mentioned the schools and the mask mandates and the things that were happening in your county, but just overall in Maryland. And of course, we are looking at our Governor Desantis, but then we look at some of the blue states, including Maryland. What is the situation now with mandatory vaccines, with mask mandates, with everything that we have heard from the almost unelected bureaucracy that we are consistently fighting, including Dr. Fauci and everybody else that is consistently giving information that doesn't quite make sense. So what is the situation with COVID and with mask mandates and vaccination passports and everything that seems to be coming our way, and people are fighting it?
Well, Gordana and I are the only two fighting this, and I'm going to pass the baton to her. She can explain this, but we are the people in the arena right now fighting on this issue.
No, Maryland is one of the lowest states in COVID positivity rate, but yet kids are muzzled, and there is, in particular counties like Montgomery County, which is the closest county to Washington, D.C., public school teachers are about to lose their jobs, and we're estimating somewhere between 260 and 500 teachers, because that particular school board has mandated that every child and every teacher must have both shots by, and then the date was October 1st, and now it was extended to November 15th. But the problem with these fascist political mandates is that some people will have a very serious side effects. VIRS.hhs.gov is an official site that cites the side effects that some people may exhibit after taking either 1 or 2 shots. Some people do have natural immunity. There is nothing stronger in fight against COVID than natural immunity. When you couple those facts with the survival rate of 99.8% of COVID, that puts COVID into the same realm as a regular seasonal flu. Countries like Denmark and Norway and Sweden have completely lifted restrictions after learning that the survival rate is high, and that there is no reason to create such a strong mandate and suppress people's ability to breathe oxygen and to force them to take vaccine that could potentially have a very significant side effects. The research has been done and completed, but it appears to me that one side of a political spectrum simply refuses to follow the science and then blames Dan or myself of not following the science, and the science cannot be debated. When you put the mask on, the decrease of oxygen in brain drops to about 76%. That's the science. I did make that up, and it's everywhere. So is side effects. So are side effects that are reported on a daily basis. So I think that is unnecessary, but it also that is a political in nature. It's part of control, to control the population, and it's absolutely anti-American. As far as I know, the children were mandated to get shots, and some children are not even eligible to get shots. Montgomery County has refused to accept religious exemption and properly signed medical exemptions to people. Other counties are all over the map. Meanwhile, our Governor Hogan has instituted board of accountability board that has to deal with specifically boards of education. That is a 7-member board that consists of unelected officials, that is not diverse as much as our state is diverse. For example, nobody on that board comes from the Eastern Shore or Western Shore in Maryland. Right. So when you couple the bureaucracy and when you couple the refusal, this is a willing and deliberate refusal to accept scientific data to side effects on people who are either forced to take vaccines or place prolonged mask wearing over time. Those things are un-American, and we simply have to restore freedom back to people and independence of local school boards. With the board of accountability board that is now bureaucratic in nature, supervising local school boards, our local school boards were almost rendered obsolete. And that, again, is one of those losses of freedom that unless Dan and I are elected, we are going to suffer consequences for generations to come.
Now, tell me about the electoral field currently. Who are you up against? So we are looking at the primary process. Who has jumped in, and who are you up against? Dan,
So-
you can maybe expand on this.
Sure. So right now we are up against a Hogan picked lady, Kelly Schultz, and she is running without really a platform. She's pretty much she wants to continue the anti-Trump policy, the anti-America first policies. Although she's a nice lady, she has no substance in her platform, and she will be a Hogan 3.0 or a rhino in how she governs. In fact, an example is when she was asked in my county recently, what is she going to do about CRT in the schools, critical race theory, indoctrinating our children? She said, well, I don't even think that's an issue here in Maryland. That was her position, and it's wrong. It's not true. It's a big problem here in Maryland, as Gordana knows quite a bit about. And so we also are being told, and I haven't heard for sure, that the anti-Trump Lincoln Project guy, Michael Steele, is considering jumping in as well. So we're up. I mean, this is a real battle of the views of freedom versus the views of statism, and we're the freedom ticket. We need everyone to back us, and we're thrilled to run hard and to win, and we have a path to victory. We just need everyone to get behind us.
So I want to address something that is, and it has become difficult to watch when it comes to the big cities, and I would include Baltimore in that. So we obviously are headquartered in Chicago. I've spent 25 years in Chicago myself and have since left and moved to lovely Florida. But we look at Chicago, we look at Baltimore, we look at all these big cities, and even in line with what you've mentioned, Gordana, going out and protesting against the police. So with the Black Lives Matter and Antifa, nobody is backing the blue, essentially. But we consistently then look at Chicago and Baltimore as examples of cities that are really being devastated. I mean, we have shootings and killings on the weekends consistently, and we read about them on Monday morning, how people got shot and how many got killed over the weekend in all of the major cities, and people are essentially escaping the big cities, which is really sad. What is it that you can do as a governor in particular to address this problem and work with our law enforcement? Because again, when something goes wrong, the first people we are going to call are our police. But somehow we have gotten it to the point where the police is completely unnecessary, and they're calling for some kind of social workers to come and answer these calls. It is, we are not treating our law enforcement as heroes, as they certainly are. What is it that you can do about ensuring safety more than anything within these communities in Baltimore, for example?
Well, I've been to Baltimore 4 times now on the campaign trail, and I'll tell you that everyone that I speak with down there, whether they're Democrat or Republican, they all say the same thing. They do want more police backup, more police in their neighborhoods that they can trust, particularly community policing, so that they know who their officers are. And that's, I intend to work immediately towards ensuring that. One of the issues is making sure the funding is there. The other issue, as you probably heard, they tried to defund the police. We defeated that in my committee this past year. The Judiciary Committee defeated the defund the police bills. However, they still slipped through some problems with the due process complaint system, which is a travesty for law enforcement. So we have a severe shortage of new officers that even want to sign up because they're concerned about these unlawful and fake complaints, which then they want to, smear them on the internet with. So my goal is to restore due process to the police as well. And then and what I've promised and talked with Baltimore City folks about is enabling the Maryland State Police to combine on serious crimes, to combine units that can go in and back up the community police officers that we will put in place. So in other words, the community police officers can stay very engaged, but when it comes to violent gangs, they can have immediate backup, which right now does not happen. It could happen today, but sadly, our governor is not doing that, and I'm going to do it. And I know Gordana is on board with this because they've had to see the BLM issues in their own neighborhoods, just as we all have in Maryland.
course.
And it's got to end. And the restaurants, for instance, down in Fells Point, Baltimore City, and Little Italy, and some of these other places, that great restaurants, and yet they've lost some of them because of the attacks. And so they're just, people are afraid to go out all the time. So we've got to restore order, and I intend to do that.
It's very unfortunate that we are facing and experiencing this in the United States, but one particular issue that is also being now talked about, and I think Gordana and I especially can speak to that, illegal immigration is something that truly made this country, again, wonderful, great, and exceptional, and everything in superlatives in terms of what we know of our Constitution, of our freedoms. However, we have a terrible problem right now at our southern border. You all know what is happening with shipping now these immigrants all around the country. I'm sure you have seen some of them in Maryland, and how that affects our communities. So Gordana, from the perspective of an immigrant, and I think it is so important in this up and coming election period to talk about the legal immigrants and to get them involved in our political process, which is what we really advocate for. Your experience as a legal immigrant, so am I, versus what is really truly going on at the border, and how this changes and impacts our communities.
Well, absolutely. Maryland is very close to Washington, D.C.
Mm-hmm.
As you know, Washington, D.C. is a metropolitan city full of people of different nations, different countries. And we come from different backgrounds. We are all legal immigrants. And everyone that comes here, we have to take civics test. We have to take citizenship test. We have to go through a process. And I would challenge an American-born citizen to take our civics test and see if they can pass it or not, because it's a hard test. It's a hard test to learn. But we take that test seriously, and we learned about Mayflower, and we embrace the pioneers, and we kind of see ourselves as pioneers because we didn't have ancestors from 1776 here previously. So we are here. We're building our communities, and we're building our small businesses. I built 2 successful businesses. I'm the voice of these immigrants. I'm the voice of immigrants that are pioneers, that are brave, that are doing the best they can, raising families, attending their church services, building their practices, building their businesses. All of them pay so much attention and care to education. And so those are the people who do not want to see this country collapse and turn into a country they came from. And one of the things that they have, and those individuals born in America don't, is they have personal experiences of what it means living in another country and starting from nothing in this country as a land of opportunity where everyone can succeed, no matter where they come from and no matter what kind of accent they have. So I am the voice of these people and these families. I'm the voice of Latin Americans. I'm the voice of people from Central America. I'm the voice of people from Africa, from Eastern Europe, or Australia for that matter, because we all want to be free, left alone to build our communities. We do not want government mandates. We do not want FBI threats and chilling effect on our speech. We don't want to be threatened. We want to be left alone so that we can raise our families freely. And that's where we bargained for. That's why we came here. That's what we created in America and Maryland. And as far as illegal immigration, that is the problem that affects equally legal immigrants and citizens that are born American citizens. We all suffer together. And unfortunately, those who came from overseas and got their citizenship, we followed the process. And then it took time, and it took money, and it took effort. And then on the other hand, you had people who are here illegally, and they sometimes benefit from extremely liberal policies. And while we are suffocating in taxes, others are flourishing of not paying taxes, going under the radar, and enjoying, for example, in Maryland, in sanctuary state and benefiting from sanctuary city rules, where our law enforcement is not allowed to notify immigration, customs, and patrol agents when there is a dangerous criminal on the street. So that is what President Trump at the time spoke about with catch and release. And we have those situations here. Some illegal immigrants became illegal because they came here legally and then they overstayed. Those people, yes. So those people actually do have a legal remedy and process that they can go through to get through their paperwork, in order, and to become proper citizens. One of the important things that no one ever talks about is students, visitors, or legal permanent residents. And one of the biggest issues that I could see through my practice is when a green card holder is convinced by a particular Democrat group that they can go and vote in general gubernatorial or general presidential election. That is the worst thing that they can do, because unless you become a US citizen, you're not allowed to vote in election. If you are a green card holder, you have no legal right to vote. And these people have no idea. So they're confused and tricked. Then they go to vote just to get an extra vote. And when they apply for their citizenships are denied because they violated federal law. So there's so much educating that needs to be done to people on all spectrums. But one of the things that Dan and I would like to do, if given the opportunity, is to straighten up what is our police supposed to do, and to embrace our customs and border patrol agents to work hand in glove with the police officers so that to remove dangerous criminals off the street. And that benefits legal people, illegal people, and citizens. They benefit. Taking away criminals off the street is something that is simply a law and order, and there is a due process to follow any kind of action. So we just want that law and order to be implemented back in Maryland, which is not in existence today.
Absolutely. And one final thing, in the last election, Serbian American community came out and backed Kimberly Klasic. She is doing some great work around Maryland with her Red Renaissance, but I've spoken to her several times. I hosted her here in Naples. And from what I understand, and this is not just the case in Maryland, but elsewhere, the reason why minority communities tend to just by default almost vote Democrat, and we all remember Joe Biden's, if you don't vote Democrat, you ain't black. But I have just gotten a notion from some of my friends in the Black community, for example, that the Republicans and grassroots Republican or conservative organizations don't really go out to these communities and don't do the grassroots outreach that is needed to galvanize those voters, to speak to them, to actually, because as we know, traditionally, a lot of these communities were in fact good Christian church-going communities, and something has shifted with that Great Society project and all of the things that have happened in the past. But from what I understand, there's really no organized effort, is it on the part of RNC or our own people, to really go out and reach out to these communities and do that types of grassroots where they will feel like they are a part of this. They are a part of this movement, and getting them galvanized to register to vote, to getting them on familiar with the issues, and doing that outreach that is being done in other communities. So either one of you, I think this is very important, particularly for places like Baltimore.
Absolutely, you're spot on. And next week, I am the only governor candidate to accept a Black Caucus invitation, to my knowledge anyway, at this point, from the Republican side, to speak to the Black Caucus in Maryland. And as you know, and as you just pointed out, a lot of these communities feel left out. They feel like, particularly our conservative voices are not in their communities much. Certainly we're not for mass handouts, but we are for hand-ups, like Ronald Reagan used to say. And that's really my focus. That's why I've been to Baltimore City so many times, because if we don't make sure that our cities are strong, then the rest of the state's going to suffer. We see that right now with our taxes being taken. They're literally putting billions of dollars into Baltimore City from the outlying counties such as mine. And what results do we have? Not much. I mean, sadly, there's a little bit, not enough accountability and people to come alongside and stop the corruption. That's what I hear a lot of my Black friends telling me. The African-American community wants people to come in there to help provide accountability, direction, and to care, to show up.
Absolutely.
And so that's one of the things that Kim Klacik has done. She showed us the way on that. I'm thrilled to work with them as any opportunity that arises to continue that process for all of our state. And I know Jordana is right in line with that too. So
absolutely. Yeah, well, absolutely. And, to your point, Olga, how many lieutenant governors or how many other governors or people in the Republican Party had endorsed a minority female or immigrant. So Dan is the first. So there's a lot of the first that is being addressed with this particular ticket. There's a lot of the first. And then a lot of communities are simply scared. The Democrat Party comes with authority and they intimidate people, and the Republican Party and the Republicans are usually individualists. They decide they go to work, they take care of their family. They don't fall into the sheep mentality. They all have their own different opinions. They all have their own little independence. Whereas the Democrat Party follows this, all for one and one for all, and they all follow the lead, even if the lead leads off the cliff. They'll all go off the cliff. And that's where they took this state, right off the cliff. So Dan and I are trying to stop this train going off completely and reverse it. And you can imagine how difficult that must be.
That will be difficult. You are in a tough state for that, but you are right. The Democrats, whether there's a little bit of conflict there, they have that collectivist mind where we are on the other side, very individual. And I have to say, there's a lot of infighting within our ranks. And I experienced it here in Florida, and we have experienced it elsewhere on the national stage. But anything else you would like to say and I might have missed?
I was going to say
Jordana.
quickly. I was going to say, thank you. This would be the first public joint Zoom since I entered on the ticket, and Dan and I could not be a better team. I'm not going to speak on Dan's side, but I didn't know he'd be so wonderful to work with. And he gives me the freedom to go and do what I can. And he's such a wonderful team player that I think Marylanders can rest assured that we could fix Maryland so quickly. This would be the day and night experience for them if we were given a chance. We need to win the primary. And I would like everybody to help us out, whether you live in Chicago or whether you live in California. I'm one of you guys, and we're fighting for our homes and our name and our dignity and our reputation. So back us up and help us out.
And our great republic. And Dan?
I would say absolutely. And there is a path to victory here. For instance, in Maryland, 90% of the Maryland Republican Party today backs President Trump. It's probably gone up from that since the Afghanistan debacle. And when you look at then the general election, independents are 62% leaning our way. And even Democrats right now are polling at such severe lows as to their party leadership. They're not happy with the hard left leadership that they are experiencing both in our state and nationally, but particularly here in Maryland. So we have a path to victory. We're working hard for that. And we ask for everyone to partner with us to carry on this vision for our country. Thank you.
Absolutely. And we are going to make sure that the Serbian American community backs you, especially having Gordana on your ticket. So we are going to work together. Serbian Radio Chicago certainly is always open to you. So we will make sure that our people hear about your campaign and that they offer any help that they can. Thank you for being with us today. And we are certainly going to follow this progress. Now, again, when is the primary?
It's June 28th,
June 28th. Excellent. So, and we are, is it Dan Cox? Give me your website so people can write it down.
DanCoxForGovernor.com. And
DanCoxForGovernor.com, and we will put it on our social and make sure that everybody follows. Thank you again for being with us today.
Thank you, Olga, for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Olga.